Dumb. Welcome to Kitchen Table Progressive. Paul Richardson here, along with Joyce Nance, inviting you to join us for an hour of casual conversation where the menu is progressive and the table menus are decidedly liberal. We hope you'll hold the discussion enlightening, entertaining, insightful, entertaining, and informative and humorous. On this week's program, we'll review some of the recent Supreme Court rulings. Also, book bans are running rampant in America. We'll take a look at some of the worst offenders, which states are banning all the books, and why don't folks just leave the queer community alone? That's Joyce will be taking that up in segment number 3. And now here's Joyce. Quite a week in the news.
Hi, you said entertaining twice. That's not going to make it any more entertaining.
What's that?
Oh. You said you hoped it would be entertaining, and then you said another sentence, and then you said entertaining again.
Yeah, I know. I did. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So hello, everybody. My back hurts.
Okay. So getting it right into the Supreme Court rulings, Friday had a couple. The court ruled in favor of a website designer in Colorado who did not want to make websites for gay weddings. There were no complainants here. She was just complaining against the state law, the Colorado state law against discrimination. And
well, not only that, I don't believe the person had even ever made any websites. They were just thinking about making websites.
I did not know that.
No actual website involved. That
right.
For a fact.
Right. There was no website in question.
There's no request for
right. There was no complainant. This was I have to look up this ruling if this was her versus the state of Colorado or ex parte, but it's very bizarre, just clearing the way for blatant discrimination in the marketplace.
President this was a Colorado case.
Yeah. Versus the state of Colorado. Okay. Yeah. Well, so I guess they're shooting that law down because this is the same law about Masterpiece Cakes. That did have a complaint. The same-sex couple did complain about the Masterpiece Cakes not wanting to make the cakes. There was also on Friday the court shut down President Biden's relief of the student loan debts, said that was unconstitutional. So that's
what was their basis for saying it was unconstitutional? I don't even see how it's any different than a tax break for a particular class.
I don't know, except for the tax break for a particular class would be an act of Congress. But I think the president does have the power to forgive debt. I mean, the president has the power to forgive debt from a nation, from another nation. Could say to Israel or whatever, any other nation that owed us money. I think the president.
Yeah, I mean, if you can pardon Roger Stone, you can pardon student debt.
Well, right? That's true. Yeah. Why can't the president say, I pardon you all? I pardon you all. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he just needs to take that tactic.
Yeah. Well,
forgive, say pardon.
he definitely needs to stand up and say, I'm pardoning and you won't let me. Yeah. Neil Gorsuch wrote the opinion in the website designer. I don't know who wrote the opinion. And I'm getting to that because there's some interesting parts about who wrote the majority opinions here. The big stir this week, the court's decision on Thursday, ruling handed down about affirmative action, racial affirmative action in college admissions. This was a case that was had lots of precedent, and the court essentially overturned all of it. We'll get to that in a second. That's saying that the colleges and universities can no longer use race in consideration. Kind of, in a way. It was a narrow ruling in a certain sense. I'll come back to that. And then in the independent legislate, that was the name of that case was Students for Fair Admissions versus President of Harvard and University of North Carolina. It originated at Harvard, where an Asian student was suing that said that affirmative action for blacks was discriminating against Asians. How you could say that? I don't know. That's a very confusing kind of way to say that. Now you can't. The affirmative act. There are two different things here. We have the issue of a history of there isn't a history of Asian slavery in the United States.
Well, there's a history of borderline Asian slavery.
Yeah, well, that's true. But then we'd have to look at which Asians are we talking about?
Well, I mean, you can't get into that.
No, you can't get into that.
No, you can't get it. Yeah, I mean, it was mostly Chinese, but they still had miscegenation, if that's the right word, and all that anti anybody that's not white.
Right.
Crap.
Oh yeah, well there was the Chinese Exclusion Act and the
Japanese internment.
Right, we had that. Well, that's after we repealed the Chinese Exclusion Act because the Chinese were at war with the Japanese. We decided, well, I guess the Chinese aren't so bad after all. Let's intern the Japanese. In the independent legislatures, Moore versus Harper, with the North Carolina legislature was suing or petitioning in court that the legislature should have sole power to decide how to choose electors and how to gerrymander or district without any input from the state courts. Surprisingly, that one was that insane idea was shot down by the court in a 6-3 ruling. That's kind of interesting that the swing votes there, of course, the liberal wing of the court being Sotomayor, Kagan, and Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, the newest member of the court, and who swung along with them was John Roberts wrote the majority opinion. Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett joined that opinion 6-3, and saying no, the legislatures are not exempt from any rulings within the state. And this regard was regarding mostly gerrymandering. The court had declined to make a ruling on partisan gerrymandering and left that to the state court. The Supreme Court declined to make that ruling. And then the state court told the legislature that they would have to get their racial gerrymandering in line with the Voting Rights Act, which they did not want to do. They wanted to gerrymander based on race, and that was Moore versus Harper. And that brings us to the case where that was the issue, and that was in Allen versus Milligan. This was out of Alabama. This was a racial gerrymandering case where the state of Alabama has 7 districts, so each having about a 14% representation, just slightly over 14%, 14.28%, something like that. And in Alabama, they were trying to pack in something like 27% of all blacks, or Alabama is 34% black. It's much higher than the nation average. 27% of these, which is a kind of a hard one to figure, live in the Montgomery area, and the Secretary of State was trying to pack them all into one district, so that whereas they really should have been split into 2 districts where they would have a minority. And the reason they said they had to do this is
wait a minute, how many districts was there in Alabama altogether? 13?
No, 7.
7?
Right.
Okay, so 7 divided by 3 would be 2 1/3.
7 divided by, okay, yeah.
Okay, because you said they were over, did you say 34% or 42?
There's 34%. Alabama is 34% black.
Okay, so that's 1/3 black, basically.
Yeah, right.
Oh, okay. So that's what I'm saying, that if you divide it, so they should really have, you know, 2 plus.
Yes. They should have for sure 2 majority districts.
Yeah, 2 majority districts.
But you see, here's what they did.
1 swing district.
Perhaps, yeah.
Fair.
Here's the thing, is because a federal legislative district is 752,000 people. The way they could get 27% into one district is that was under 752,000 people, and then they could leave other districts to be not even full districts. You see what I mean? If they packed one of them with 752, all the blacks in one district, they could leave white districts even with fewer people in them, not even a full district, could have their way, you see, of getting their own representative without even having a full district.
Well, I don't know, but I think that if they do anything like this, they're just going to have the libs moving to Alabama. Seriously.
Not me.
Long enough to register to vote.
Right.
In some states, it's only 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
And, just do it.
Right.
I mean, if it's their game, then we got to, counter move it.
Right. And in this case, the court ruled, I believe this was a 6-3 ruling also. And again, guess who's not on the side of any minorities in every single one of these?
That would be Judge Alito and so-called Judge Alito and so-called Judge Thomas.
Yep, they were on the side. They were not on the side of any minorities in any of these cases.
Not on the side of God.
Right. And okay, so that is Alabama v. Allen v. Milligan, out of Alabama. And
30 seconds.
Sure. The last one was the Navajo Nation versus Arizona versus Navajo Nation, and that was over water rights. The Navajo reservation once, when it in the 1868 treaty, did have enough water, but as the time has gone by, as the Southwest, they've dried up, and they've always had terrible soil, so they never had very good. So the next thing we want to talk about here, segment 2, is that book bans are running amok across America. There are some worst offenders, and it's no surprise that these are many of them in the red states. 3 in particular, actually about, I think 5 states are the worst offenders, but 2 or 3 of them are really bad. The story that I was looking at in Education Week was a teacher in Georgia was fired this past week for assigning a book called What Color Is My Shadow to her 5th and 6th grade. This was a exceptional classroom, gifted students. And the book is apparently about, I haven't read it, but.
Hey, Paul.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of book banning history that I wanted to start with.
Oh, okay.
Does that work? Okay. All right. So this is just regarding the United States. The first book ban in the U.S. was in 1637 by Thomas Morton published his New English Canon, which was banned by the Puritan government as it was considered a harsh and heretical critique of Puritan customs and power structures. Mm-hmm. Then the next thing that happened was in 1873, the Comstock, and this is really the backbreaker right here, from 1873. The Comstock Law was passed by the Congress under the Grant administration and referred to an act for the suppression of trade in and circulation of obscene literature and articles of immoral use. The act criminalized usage of the U.S. Postal Service to send any of the following items. This is 1837. Erotica.
1873.
1877. Yeah,
1873. Yeah.
Yeah. These are the items. Erotica.
Right.
Contraceptives.
Right.
Abortifacients, never heard of that word. Sex toys. Personal letters alluding to any sexual content or information, or any information regarding the above items. The act not only restrained the distribution of pornography, but also the spread of medical journals that held information regarding contraceptives and abortion. Mm-hmm. And then lastly, there's way more, of course, but in 1885, Huckleberry Finn was banned based on the Comstock Law.
Yeah, Moby Dick was a banned book. The classic novel by Herman Melville, Moby Dick, was banned in America. It was actually published in England before it was published in America, and it came to America mostly it was published chapter by chapter in magazines, and many magazines, apparently, I didn't realize this, in the 19th century, the 1800s, were Christian magazines, and they published chapters of books. And Moby Dick, the classic novel that we've all read in high school English, was banned for being anti-Christian. But today's bans center around being really uptight about sex, I think.
Well,
of course, the other ones were too. The Comstock Act, I think Anthony Comstock was a little uptight about sex himself, wasn't he?
Well, they're uptight about sex, which, of course, they know just as well as anybody that that increases the demand for that kind of stuff.
Interest, yeah. Well, and of course,
which is the sole goal. And right now, I'm sad to say they're focusing on the poor gays.
Well, obviously, a book entitled "What Color Is Your Shadow? Is My Shadow?" Is all about sex. The character, a child realizes that his
in
mother's
the title.
Yeah, my shadow. That's sex right there. I mean, the title. Apparently, the child's mother has a pink shadow and the father has a blue shadow, but the child doesn't know. Doesn't think, oh, my shadow's not pink or blue. I think my shadow is purple. And then the teacher assigned to the class that they could write their own poems about what color their shadow is. Now, this will get you fired every time. When you have kids writing poetry about what color their shadow is, that can't be tolerated. I mean,
it's hard to argue with that logic.
It's really hard. And of course, there was the complaining parent or two. I don't know if the complaining parent actually had a child in this class. It seems unlikely, because usually in gifted children's classes, the parents are a little more, shall we say, progressive or liberal-minded, smarter than that to say, I don't want my child writing a poem about what color his shadow is. It's obviously pink or blue. So that was interesting. But the organization PEN America has tracked that they're in 22, the first part, or the beginning of the school year in 2022, so last school year, that since then there have been over 1,500 books banned in 32 states. But the 5 most where they're mostly happening is Texas, Florida, Missouri, South Carolina, Texas, and Utah. This is where they're mostly coming from. But where they're 40% of those, so over 600 of these books came out of 3 counties, and those were in Missouri and Florida. No, Missouri, Texas, and Florida. Those 3 counties in Missouri, Texas, and Florida, these school boards, school districts banned the over 600 books since the beginning of the school year, this school year. So that was 2022, 2023.
What were the names of some of the books that were banned besides?
The number 1 banned book is Gender. Let's see, it was called Gender. Let me get the title right. Gender Queer, a memoir by Maya. I think it's Maya Kobib. And then the second most banned was Flamer by Mike Curato.
So those were both queer books, I'm assuming.
Yes. Mike Curato is an award-winning author and illustrator, and has all kinds of credentials with writing children's books. But now here's the thing. The school districts say they're acting based on state law. Now, the state laws, basically, a lot of these just say no sexually explicit materials. Now, there's a problem with this. Sexually explicit does not necessarily mean obscene or something that should be avoided. Sexually explicit, because there was a case in California in 1973 called Miller versus California, and this had to do with obscenity. And there is what's known as the Miller test. So the Miller test says whether the average person applying contemporary community standards would find the work taken as a whole as having a prurient interest. That meaning unwholesome interest. And the two-step test is 1, whether the work depicts in any offensive way human sexual conduct or excretory functions.
Okay, but I get all that, but you can turn on Netflix or Apple Plus or Disney Plus any day of the week and basically watch people having sex. And
right, but the question is whether or not the average person applying the community standard, which is the state law, would find it. And the second test, this is interesting. Does the work have no literary or lacks serious literary, scientific, or artistic or political value? Now, I think that's pretty interesting, because when we see that the left is trying to say that all of this, or that the right wing is saying this is all left-wing agenda, then that makes it political. And so I don't see how I think there would be a constitutional challenge, but there have not been, for the most part, book bans are constitutional if it says that it has to be, the Miller test requires that it be explicit state law, not just sexually explicit material.
Okay, but one question. We're getting close to being done with this section, by the way. 1 minute. But why does state law trump the Constitution?
Only if
the First Amendment.
If the state law is a violation of the First Amendment.
It's in violation.
No, well, the rule, that's what I'm talking about here in Miller. It said that certain kinds of speech, offensive speech or obscene speech, is not protected, and that's why I apply the Miller test as to whether it has does the work as a whole have a prurient interest. In other words, an unwholesome interest, and I can't see how What Color Is My Shadow has an unwholesome interest. And the second part is, does it lack any serious literary, scientific, artistic, or political value?
Now,
we'd like to talk a little bit, or I know Joyce wants to talk about what the heck. Leave the queer community alone, right? And you don't want to say leave the LGBTQ community alone, right?
No,
right?
because it's even longer than that, and I can't remember those initials. So
and it doesn't spell anything.
There's not anybody I know that is queer or gay or all the other words that are not in that may be in those initials, but nobody, as in nobody, uses those initials other than straight people, mainly the libs.
Mainly the libs.
Mainly the libs.
Yeah. So I actually was. Now, how did that come about? Because I always, when at first it was LGBT, and then it got added LGBTQ, and I was under the impression that the word queer was a no-no, because people said queer back in the 70s, and that was like, oh, you're being mean. Or is that a matter of just straight people saying queer, like?
You have to answer your question. I have to get up for a second.
Oh, sure. Well, I can remember back in the 70s when the word queer was just a disparaging. Of course, those were the days when people said homosexual, and now homosexual is kind of an outdated term, but apparently queer is a preferred word now, and I don't know. I'm a straight white guy, so not sure exactly why the LGBTQ acronym came about, but it is what is, I think, fair to say, used, probably generated by the liberal community or the progressive community. Although
I'm back. Sorry, somebody just walked. Some man just walked right by my window that is not in public place. So, sorry, it was an emergency kind of.
Wow.
I'm not really, because I really should be running out there to see who the hell that is. But in any case, yeah, I just wanted to say the laws that are getting are just the going backwards that's happening is I think it was caused by DeSantis. He's put in a whole bunch of anti-gay stuff, and he has 6 new ones for this year. He had the other ones for last year. He has one called the Florida Blueprint. It's a blueprint of bigotry, actually. A bill would give Florida the unprecedented ability to strip parental rights from a supportive parent when the child's other parent is not supportive.
Oh, really?
Just take the kid away.
You mean if the kid is gay or lesbian?
Yes.
And the parent that's supportive of the child should be taken away in favor of the parent who's, no, you're going to be straight.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if that one's for trans or just gay in general, but even if it is just for trans today, and I say the word just as like it's not a just, it's horrible. But if they've isolated it for one like tiny group, their goal is to expand it. That's for everything. That's they have the Don't Say Gay bill, expansion bill, to erase transgender and non-binary people from the curriculum. Mm-hmm. It creates an they say LGBTQ plus definition, anti-queer definition of sex-based on reproductive function. And we force school staff and students to dead name and misgender each other. So if you identify as one gender, but they don't agree with you, then you can't use it.
You can't use it how?
You can't say it out loud.
You can't say I'm.
Yeah. You don't say, "Hey, call me Mr." I can't.
Or what will they do? Just
well,
kick you out of school? I mean, there has to be some they have to have
there is something. I don't know what the penalty is. Another one, anti-trans bathroom, criminalizes trans. You can see they're mostly at this moment aimed at trans people for using the restroom that matches their gender identity. And that is even including ones that are just single stalls.
Yeah.
Which don't have other people in it.
I mean, like the family restroom at the
airport.
There's
but there's like in Portland, they have a whole school where every single bathroom is like that. It's inside. You go inside, but then each booth, so to say, is floor to ceiling door. You're in your own.
So it doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter who's going in there.
No, it doesn't matter. If you were outside,
you have your own little. It's like being in a porta potty next to somebody else.
Right. Yeah. If you weren't inside, it wouldn't feel the least bit weird. But because you are, that's how it kind of feels weird.
You're in your own little closet. so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that this is ridiculous.
I know, but in high school, they just term it as a place to go smoke dope, but
right.
or do drugs.
Yeah.
But be that as it may, license to discriminate healthcare bill would allow healthcare providers and insurance to deny a patient care on the basis of religious, moral, ethical beliefs. So that's the website / cake maker all over again.
Well, here's the thing about the website. The fact that there was no complaint. The fact is, one of the ways you can avoid, if you don't want to do, I mean, if I'm a musician and I don't want to play for a KKK rally, I'm not the one who makes the offer. If they come to me, they're making the offer. Hey, we'll pay you to play at our thing, right? I don't have to accept the offer.
Yeah.
So if this web designer, not only she never put up
no website, there was no request for a website.
There was no offer made. So in other words, the whole thing was not the whole thing was
the whole thing was fictitious.
It was made up.
If this happens, then this law will bear the full weight of the U.S. whatever.
And here's the thing: is because the Supreme Court cannot require the state of Colorado to repeal their non-discrimination law. They can't do that. They can't do anything about it. And they really can't even, I guess they could, they can't really say it's unconstitutional. They can only take case-by-case applications of it. And this one wasn't even, I mean, they basically ruled that you can discriminate in the marketplace against gay, lesbian, or trans
queer people. Fictitious case.
Based on a fictitious yeah, and there are things. For instance, this is how ridiculous it is. The Supreme Court won't even hear an appeal to a death sentence until there's an execution date set. Now you compare that to the fact that there's not even in this case where there's not even a website. There's nobody asking for her to do anything. If you compare those two kinds of logic, it's absolutely ridiculous.
It's insanity. And then there's other stuff that the anti-queer is like. I don't know if you heard about the fiasco at Dodger Stadium. Did you?
No.
Well, there's a group. They're from San Francisco originally, but they may be all around it. But they're called Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, and they're men that dress up as men as nuns, and they do. It's like a costume, like a Halloween kind of costume, basically. And they charitable, and so they were invited to Dodger Stadium, and guess what? The religious people. They just couldn't believe it. Although they've been there before and it was all fine. Right. So they were disinvited because there was such an uproar. Then there was a big giant uproar from the other side. So right. Then they invited them back again. And then there was an uproar again. So what they did was they basically had them there an hour before the game and got them in and out. And then, that was it. And then, so also the National Hockey League no longer allows anybody in the hockey league to wear a pride themed jersey or even a little patch of support. For on Gay Pride Month or any day.
But can you wear an armband supporting white supremacy?
One? Most likely.
Yeah, white supremacy. Okay.
15 seconds.
Okay. Go ahead. Finish it up.
So we're going to go into break now, and then we're going to come back with the trivia contest.
All right, trivia.
What, if anything, you know.
want to do each week a little bit of a trivia contest for you. We'll have some questions about I think we'll do about half a dozen questions each week about the Constitution and American history mostly, but well, we might branch it out. Could be.
So we're going to go to more current stuff. This is all like for if you were born in 1600.
Okay. All right. We're
lucky there's not a Vikings question on.
Oh, well, I thought about that, but I couldn't fit it in. Okay, you go ahead and do the.
All right, so I'm going to read the questions and the answers, and then I'll give the answers at the end. We don't have any additional information to add to the answers, but maybe Paul has some stuck up in his noggin. Right, here we go. Question number 1. Who were the redcoats that Paul Revere warned about on his famous ride on the night of April 18th, 1775? A, Germans, B, French, C, Indians, D, British. Question number 2. The shot heard around the world led to the drafting of the Declaration of Independence at the beginning of which war? A, the Civil War, B, the French and Indian War, C, the Revolutionary War, D, the War of 1812. 3. Who was the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army from 1775 to 1784? A, General Baron von Steuben, B, General George Washington. No, don't give stuff away. C, General Benedict Arnold. D, General William Howe. 4. Why did George Washington cross the Delaware River on Christmas morning, 1775? A, to celebrate Christmas with his family. B, to get out of New Jersey before it got too cold. C, to hunt turkeys for Christmas dinner. D, to launch a surprise attack on the British. Question 5. Which foreign country helped America win its independence? A, France, B, Germany, C, England, D, Spain. 6. Which American lawyer defended British soldiers on trial for murder in the Boston Massacre on March 5th, 1770? A, George Washington, B, John Adams, C, Thomas Jefferson, and D, James Madison. All right, well, I'm sure you guys all got, is this over at 52?
5230.
5230. Okay, so I'm sure that you got all those answers, but we'll go over them now. And if Paul knows any extra information, then Paul will add it. It is now 4413.
Okay, well, we'll have to just
wait a minute. Okay, so let's go. Here we go. Who were the redcoats that Paul Revere warned about on his famous ride on the night of April 18th, 1775? A, Germans, B, French, C, Indians, D, British. Answer?
Okay, well, it would be Paul Revere was warning about the massing of British troops and that they would be coming. Remember, he said there was a poem by William Wadsworth Longfellow called Paul Revere's Ride, and it talks about how he would flash a light. It said, flash once if by land, 2 if by sea. And of course, that was the night of April 18th. And on the morning of April 19th, 1775, was really the beginning of the conflict for our independence. So the answer was D, the British. The redcoats are
the Brits. It's always the Brits. All right.
Well, then, right.
Okay. The Germans, French, or I don't know so much about the Indians. I don't know.
I don't know what the color the French were, but the French. Okay, go ahead.
All right. Number 2. We're at 4539. The shot heard around the world leading to the drafting of the Declaration of Independence at the beginning of which war? A, Civil War, B, French and Indian War, C, Revolutionary War, D, the War of 1812. The answer is?
That would be see the Revolutionary War, the American Revolution, was, as a matter of fact, it was on that morning in the Battle of Lexington, the morning of April 19th, 1775, was the beginning, the shot heard round the world, as termed, by the way, by Ralph Waldo Emerson in his historic poem called Concord Hymn. He termed it, that's where the embattled farmers stood and fired the shot heard around the world. Now, the Battle of Lexington took place kind of over a bridge, over a kind of a little stream. It was a rude old bridge that was kind of rickety, and that's where the battle took place. The Americans did not prevail on the morning of April 19th. The British won that skirmish battle at Lexington. However, the Americans did drive the British from the battlefield later that afternoon in Concord. The Battle of Concord. The Americans would be considered victorious, having driven the British soldiers from the battlefield. And that was also the time when they had the Minutemen, who were running from tree to tree, shooting at the British with their muskets. And because they were outnumbered, but they did drive the British from the battlefield. And that was the shot heard around the world, was the beginning of the Revolutionary War. By the way, the Civil War was our own Civil War in the 1860s. The French and Indian War happened before the Revolutionary War. That was, and then, of course, the War of 1812 was long after the Revolutionary War.
Okay. Who was the commander? This is question 3. Who was the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army from 1775 to 1784? A, Baron General, I don't know why it says General Baron von Steuben, but B, General George Washington, C, General Benedict Arnold, D, General William Howe. Answer?
It would be General George Washington. General Baron von Steuben actually was an active member, and he was queer. He was active. He was a German general who whipped the American army into shape, got them in shape to actually fight the British. He happened to be gay, and George Washington was well aware of that and didn't have any problem with it. So
there you have it.
And the other generals, of course, General Benedict Arnold defected to the British and betrayed George Washington. And of course, General William Howe was actually the commanding general of the British forces, not the American forces.
Okay, here we go. We are on question 4, and it is 49 minutes into the program. Why did George Washington cross the Delaware Bridge on Christmas morning, 1775? This sounds like the beginning of a joke.
Well, you mean to get to the other side?
Yeah.
No, he didn't cross the Delaware, but he crossed the Delaware River.
Okay.
And do you know what he said to his men before they used a boat? You know what he said to his men before they got in the boat to cross the river? He said, "Men, get in the boat." That's the joke. That's one of the best old jokes.
All right. You need to retake comedy school. Next. What? Okay. What's the answer to the question?
It would be to launch a surprise attack on the British. That would be D. He did not go to hunt turkeys. He did not go to get out of New Jersey, because he crossed to get back into New Jersey.
Okay.
He was already
in New Jersey at that time of year, and I totally, if I could have had a boat to get on to get out of there, I would have did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the wind. It was the wind. It went through like 25 years that I had on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, they had their wool uniforms.
That was Fort Dix.
Yeah.
Maybe was it Fort Dix that he was using? Or was Mr. Dix not born yet?
I don't think.
No Dix involved. All right. Anyways.
There weren't very many Dicks around then.
I don't think that's allowable for FCC, but in any case, question number 5. We're at 50 minutes, 40 seconds. Which foreign country helped America win its independence? France, Germany, England, Spain.
No, that would have been France. France was instrumental in helping America gain its independence through a lot of stumbling blocks in front of the British, especially out at sea. driving the British ships to and fro. Of course, France and England have always been at odds.
Yeah. France has always been America's secret best friend.
That's right. And we bought the Louisiana Territory from Napoleon for some like $12 million. So it was a pretty good investment.
He was a dictator, but he was a fun dictator. All right, last question. Which American lawyer defended British soldiers on trial for murder in the Boston Massacre on March 5th, 1770? A. George Washington, B. John Adams, C. Thomas Jefferson, D. Madison. We're at 5140.
Okay. Well, interestingly enough, those were all American presidents, and it would have been B. John Adams, who defended, and he was ridiculed for defending the British. The Boston Massacre was a time when the people were angry with the British troops for quartering them, and they started it was kind of a mob, and they started pelting the British soldiers. There was, I think, 6 British soldiers. They started pelting them with rocks, and so the British soldiers did open fire. But remember, they didn't have automatic weapons. They had muskets and
okay.
People.
So thanks everybody for coming to Kitchen Table Progressives. And I'm Joyce Nance, and that's Paul Richardson, and we will see you next time.